Today, I am honored to have Dr. Craig Hogan on the show. Craig is the president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute. He has been a business professor at 3 universities, curriculum and training administrator at 2 universities and medical school, and founder and director of an online business writing program. Um, Craig has written many, many books, and his most recent just came out. What did you say? Like last week or something?
Last week. Yep.
Last week is Answers to Life's Enduring Questions from Science Discoveries and Afterlife Revelations. And today we're going to talk about the book before that, What Happens to You in Your Life and Your Afterlife, from speakers in the afterlife. So
Mhm.
welcome to the program, Craig.
Yeah, Marla, it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to it, and there's so much that people don't realize, and we need to get the word out. So if we will answer any questions that people have, if they want to send it in questions to us, and we would answer them. But right now, I just want to go through everything that we can during this time together.
Wonderful. So, Craig, how did you begin down this path? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you started studying the afterlife.
Well, about 25 years ago, I really didn't have any belief in anything. And
Mm,
then at that time, I began to meet with psychics. They just came into my life, and I couldn't figure out why. And so then I learned that I have psychic ability and that I'm able to do remote viewing. I can view things that are thousands of miles away just by focusing on them. And then I found out that I can do psychometry. I can hold things in my hand and find out about people based on them. So I realized there's a whole lot more to life than what we assume is to be true. And so I began to delve into it. And as I delved into it, it became apparent that not only do we have this life, but we have the life after this life, and that we would continue when this life is finished. And so what I did then was to start researching it, to find out more about it, everything I could find out about it. And as I did that, then I found out much more than I'd ever thought was going to be possible. There is so much more to life, and this life is just a smidgen. This is just a drop in the bucket. And there are things that are happening in this life that are expanding what we know about life in general, and there are things happening in the next life that are coming to us that we're learning about. And as a result of the things happening in this life that we're learning about, the things that are happening in the next life, we really are understanding much more about why we're here, what our purpose is, what's going to be happening to us and during this life, why we have this life, what's going to happen to us at the very moment when we transition from this life, and then what life is like on the next life. So all of these things are available to us now. We know what they are, and we just have to let people know about them.
right, absolutely. So, were you raised in a religious or spiritual family?
I was raised as a Lutheran, and we were nominal Lutherans. Everybody is. You go to church every
Oh,
Sunday, and you go through the. And I was in Luther League, which is for children, and at the time that I had decided I was going to become pre-ministerial, and so I went to a Lutheran college. And then about halfway through the college, then I just kind of dropped out of it. I was not interested anymore in it. And then after that, I had nothing for years, for decades, no belief of any kind. And then finally, I did come on to religion and then was interested in religion, actually became a born again Christian and went through that period of my life. And then I was an administrator at Wheaton College in their graduate program. So I was with the Baptists very strongly. And then after that, that dropped off because I realized that there wasn't any truth there. And so as a result of that, then drifted for many years, not really knowing what to think about life, about what to think about who we are. And finally, then came upon these people who were psychics, and I was
right.
drawn into it. I was drawn into understanding it. And it just kept on snowballing until I came to the point where I am today.
Yeah. So, what did you have any like aha moments? I mean, you've studied and studied. I know I've had a few experiences that just like, oh my gosh. And do you have any that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah,
Or
I
there's
think.
so many.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that the first one was when I found out I could remote view. I sat
Yes.
down in front of a monitor, television monitor, and you get a code. The code is meaningless. It's just a series of letters and numbers, and you focus on the code with your eyes closed, and then the impressions come to you from somewhere, wherever that thing is that's associated with the code. And so I did the first one, and it was immediately successful, and I was able to do it. I had spot on what was there, and that thousands of miles away. And so as a result of that, then that had an effect in my life. I've also sat in physical mediumship seances in which I've had people who are people coming from the other side of life who are in bodies now because they're manifesting in bodies during the seances. And they actually come around and they have talked to me. They've put their hands on my head. I've felt their hands, and I've watched them do things in the room, make things move around in the room. And so those are really startling manifestations that show that we are much more than a body, and we continue to live, and we can visit the earth plane. We can come back to the earth plane and communicate with the people who are here. So I think those are the most phenomenal things that have happened in my life.
Oh, wow. It's interesting. I love the way how, I've really done a lot of research too. Probably not really scratched the surface of what you've done, but I've done a lot for myself, and it's listening to other stories, even though I've done some, I've been to some seances and plant medicine and things like that. But you really did it internally. Like, I want to see these things, and I want to see that I can do these things like remote viewing that we all know the government's been doing for years and years and years, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, in your book, you talk a little bit about our past as a kind of as a civilization, and why many do not believe in the afterlife today. That what I guess you would call skeptics, even though I look at that as a positive word, because if you're skeptic, hopefully you're curious and open-minded. But can you talk a little bit about what we were taught as children, kind of the dogma between science and religion?
Yeah, what happened was there have always been people who have told us the truth. During the golden age of those luminaries, which was in the first millennium, beginning of the first millennium, we had people who were telling us what the truths were. It was in our culture, it was in our belief system that there was a life after this life, that life is much greater than what we experience here. And so we had all of that tradition. Then what happened was that especially in the West, the church took over spirituality. And so once the church took it over, then it became the province of the priests and the holy books. And as a result of that, then we were stifled. Each one of us as individuals, we no longer were able to seek spiritual truth. We had to listen to what was coming in from outside of us. That then took over, and it remained the dominant factor that was keeping spirituality from us until the scientists came in the 17th and 18th centuries. They were making discoveries and saying that we don't need God, we don't need a religion, we don't need any of this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to chuck the whole thing. And what they did was when they chucked the whole thing, they chucked spirituality as well, so that there was no belief in anything. It was only mind. It was only the body, and the mind then was an epiphenomenon. It was coming out of the body, and there was nothing more to it than that. And so as a result of that, then we've come down today to have what is amounts to the national religion, which is science. And then the scientists are telling us what to believe. And they're saying, don't believe that there's anything beyond this life. Don't believe that there's anything that you can find out from looking inside of yourself. And you just have to listen to us, the scientists. So it's the same thing as it was with religion. So now, finally, at this point in the 20th and 21st centuries, we're breaking out of that. We're going back to the realities that we knew were true in the distant past. We're finding out the fact that we are eternal beings, we are one with the universal consciousness, and that we are one with each other. And we're just discovering that and really making use of it to realize that we can live together in love, peace, and joy because of the fact that we're not separated from each other. And so that's the reason that it was suppressed for such a long period of time. And that's the reason we're seeing this renaissance now, this explosion of spirituality, of a change in consciousness. And it's just now starting, and it's accelerating all the time. We expect big things to happen in 2022.
Right. Right. I've heard you say that.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, 2022 looks like it. Many things are going to come together in our understanding of the life after this life. And as a result of that, then we're going to be seeing things that are revealed more widely. In other words, more people are going to be experiencing them. And so once more people experience what we know to be true now that is opening up, then they will be sharing their experiences. So then as they share their experiences, then it will result in more people. In other words, it's going to be a change, a sea change, a paradigm change in humanity that's going to result and it's going to snowball. It will continue to get bigger and bigger. And we see that happening in 2022 as at the beginning. And we will notice the change. We will see the change in people. We know the fact that from the research that a small number of people within a community, if they are involved in transcendental meditation, if they're focused upon love and kindness and gratitude, then a small number of people then can make a change within the community. It actually it reduces the crime rates. It increases the number of inventions and helpful enterprises that occur, and many other factors that result from just this small number of people, 1 or 2% of the people. So we know that having a small number of people devoted to this is going to make a difference for humankind. So we will see that snowball effect happening, and we believe it's going to be starting in 2022.
That is so exciting. And I think we're already seeing that with the near death experiences, just coming out for, I mean, it's almost like a popular thing now, but coming out and how beautiful it is that I think that many want to hear it from the PhDs and the neuroscientists and you sure don't have to go far to find that, and atheists and these people who have these just profound transformational experiences.
Mhm.
It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
So I've I've heard you talk a little bit. I don't know how involved you were with the Greater Living, the book with Dr. Schwartz, with Dr. Gary Schwartz. Were you involved with the writing of that book? Greater
No,
Reality Living. Okay, okay.
I'm
Well,
involved.
I know they were doing some things for the children. We were talking about that. And of course, the children. That's what my passion is, and that for us to be able to speak of and tell stories, even though the young, already know this, but of eternal life and how beautiful it would for them to live in love, not fear. And can you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. What happens is that the children in the first 7 years of their lives are being programmed. And there's a cell biologist named Bruce Lipton who
Yes.
speaks. And in the first 7 years, then they're programmed. They become what society is. In other words, they become a clone of society. So
Mhm.
they're coming from their family of origin, their religions, their organizations, their schools. And so then they are formed, they're molded into whatever society is. After that period of 7 years, then they start to live their lives and they are ready when they become young adults to make a change. At that point, they have a choice. They can either stay with what it is that they were programmed into when they were ages 1 to 7, or they can make the changes based upon what they want to become. And they can become all that they are possible to become in their lifetimes. They make the choice then. Most adults, 99% of the adults, never make the change. So what they do is they live the programming that they had in the first 7 years all the way through their life. But we have the choice, and we're given that choice. We're also given help from those on the other side who are really devoted to making a change in our lives. So all we need to do is to believe that we want to make the change. We want to become something else, something better. And once we decide we want to do that, then we can abandon those things that we were programmed in from childhood, and we can start to live the lives that we should be living in this lifetime. Those things that we were taught in childhood about, for instance, the idea that there is no life after this life, or if there is a life, that nobody knows what it is, and it's going to be something where you're on clouds with harps. All of those superstitions that were taught to people as children have to fall away. They have to say that. I realize now that that is not what happens after a person goes on to the next life. And during this life, I'm not separate from other people. If I was taught I have to compete with them. I was taught that I have to be better than them. I have to be a good consumer. I have to buy more things. And all of those lies that children were told have to go away. They have to fall away. And the way that they do that is by deciding they want to be something different and then going on to examine who they are, examine what they want to change, and then changing it. We are helping them to make those decisions. We're helping them to see that there's something greater that they can attain to. And that as a result of that, then they can change their lives and they can live in love, joy, and peace. All they have to do is decide to do it.
Right. Well, what about if they haven't, they're still young, like 5 or 6 years old, and I don't know, you may have some, times when you're able to spend time with those little ones. What do you do? What do you feel like that caregivers can do to help not be so programmed?
Yeah, we need to change the models. We need to change what we're doing. So it isn't so much teaching in the sense of
Yes.
verbalizing and saying things to the children. It's that we're going to show them by being different. If we can show them by being different, then that will make a difference in their lives. And we can show that through unconditional love for them. We can show that through our love for one another, them seeing us modeling love, seeing caring and being engaged with other people, not seeing them as separate, but seeing them as one with us, as brothers and sisters in this life. And when they see that model, when they become involved in that, then they will then grow into having those values. We can't teach them by telling them what to do. We have to teach them by doing it. And then they will see that and they will model that in their own lives.
Right. That's what's so important, that this change is coming, because and just validating their experiences, right, when they have these experiences as very young children, because they are this earthly realm's future for sure. So your new book, you receive answers from the afterlife. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that? Are you meditating, or what kinds of things do you do?
What I do when I'm writing is I do the research. So I'm looking at the research from scientists
Mhm.
and I'm looking at the research from the statements by people living in the life after this life. We have many, many volumes of those statements now through mediums from people living in the next life, and they have wonderful things to say to us. So we have the records of them now. But then when I start to write, I do go into what amounts to a sort of a trance. I do go into listening. I go into feeling what it is that's coming to me. And then based upon that, then I just continue to write and it flows, it's given to me. And then when I go back through it and I edit it, sometimes I can't believe what I wrote. It's surprising. It's like, where did that come from? Then when I finish the book, then I will go back through it and I will look through it and make sure that everything that's in there fits with the science, fits with the people who are communicating with us, and fits with what my intuition, what I'm being told about the way that life is. But in general, all of what I do then has citations, it has notations, it has the research that's there so that I can say to people, yes, we know this is true. It isn't just me speaking. My intuitions are being based upon what I'm learning about life and about the life after this life from the resources that we have that include both science and the people from the next life who are speaking to us and are telling us what's true.
Right. And it's amazing how, when you can really trust your feelings, trust your intuition, and how more just starts pouring in, then all of those messages. So I also know that in your book you talk about how science is now the leader in proving continuity of consciousness,
Mhm.
and the mind is not the brain. And we've had quite a few interviews, and I've interviewed quite a few people talking about this. But can you elaborate just personally on this, how you feel, and what is reality? Big question.
And that's So yes, the mind is not in the brain. We know that to be true, and we know that because of the fact that, for instance, I can remote view, that I can sit in my office in Illinois and I can see something which is in New Jersey, and I can describe it and then send that description to the person, and they can show me the photograph, and that is exactly what it was. So we know the mind is not confined to the brain. We also know that we will continue to live after the mind stops operating. We know that from the near-death experiences that people have, but more importantly, we know that from people who traveled on to the next life. And when they travel on to the next life, they come back and they give us messages. They tell us what it's like. They tell us what happens when they make the transition and what happens in their new life, what they're doing as they live in the next life. So we have all of the research. The sciences now are at the forefront of telling us that life is not what we thought it was.
Mhm.
Quantum mechanics, which was begun in the early part of the 20th century, has determined that our consciousness is a creator of reality. Reality is not there until we look for it, until we want to see it. When we observe it, when we measure it, we want to see it, then the reality appears. When it's not there, it's only the possibilities. It's called probability waves. And those possibilities are there, but they're not in a reality. They're not in an existence. So what we've learned from that is that and what we've learned from the people who are living on the next life, we've learned that there is nothing but mind and experiences. The mind is our universal intelligence, that's the universal consciousness, and we are individual members of it. And so, because the mind is only the individual consciousness, what we experience as the world is only experiences. So, you can have a sight experience, but there is nothing that has to be out there in a world that is separate from us. All of it is one with us. We are one with the world. We are one with Jupiter. We're one with the stars that are in the night sky. We are one with everything. And all we need to do to be able to access that, to learn about that, is to sit and quietly ask for it. So if we ask for the information, we'll be given the information. And we have teams of people on the other side who are helping us. They're concerned about humanity. They want to work with humanity. And so they are waiting for us to ask. And then they're waiting for us to, we've asked, for us to listen and to get the messages that they're sending to us. And so science now is being informed by those people, those teams on the other side, and science is making the discoveries that we are much more than the body. We are not our brain, our minds are not in our brains, that the body will continue after the brain stops operating, and that we have a life in the next life. And all of that is coming out of science now.
Right.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the questions in your book because I find it fascinating, comforting, exciting. So what is it like in the afterlife?
So the life that we live in the next life is just like this life. We are
And
on
do
a
you call it the afterlife? I noticed you say the life after. What do you call our next life?
the life after this life.
Okay.
And the only reason for saying that is because this is not the real life, and the next life is an afterlife.
Yes.
Because this is we are on a spiritual plane. The Earth's plane is a spiritual plane. It's just another spiritual plane from the next spiritual plane that we're on. And what we're experiencing here, that we have matter and energy, we have things that are solid, we have puppies and we have streams and we have the mountains that are around us. All of these things then are the same in the next life. So we have all of the same things, but they're just wonderful, much more glorious. We're in this life because we need to learn lessons, and we need to learn them in a harsher environment. And so this life does have negatives. It has the things like beginnings and endings. But when we go into the next life, it's just like this. It's solid. We have bodies. We have buildings. We live in houses. It's exactly the same, except that it's much more wonderful, and there are no beginnings and endings, and there are no negatives in the next life. So in fact, the people who transition to the next life very often will feel like they're dreaming, like they're going to wake up, because the life there is exactly the same as the life here. But then they realize they're given counsel by their loved ones and by others there that what has happened is they've made the transition. They're in this new life, And this new life is the wonderful world in which they're going to be living for as long as they want to. They don't have to go on to higher levels. They can live there for as long as they want to, thousands of years in Earth terms. We don't. They don't have a time. Is no sun. There are no days and years, but there is a time of sorts that things do pass. But they don't keep track of time the same way that we do. But what happens in the next life is we get a body. We have a body that's just as solid as this body. It will look exactly like this body, except it will be our body when we were at the prime of our lives, when we were in our 20s or 30s. If a child then goes into the next life, the child will be reared there. The child will grow up there at the same timing as they would have if they were on the earth plane. And they will come into adulthood, and then they will come into being in their 20s and 30s. We also know that children who are loved, who are not born, who don't come to term for whatever reason, whether it's a miscarriage or an abortion, what happens is that they then, if they were loved, if that individual who was going to be in that body is loved, then they will be born on the next plane of life. They'll grow up there, and then they'll have a reunion with their loved ones, the mother especially, who come there to see them. In fact, many mothers who come there and don't realize that their loved one has been born on the next plane of life are very surprised to find out that they have a child or two there, and it was the child that was miscarried or was otherwise terminated. So we do know that in the next life has all the things of this life, but much more glorious, much more wonderful. And then that's a time for us to live in peace with each other and continue our learning. We continue to learn there. But the learning is not rote learning the way it is here. The learning is much more experiential.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So when those are in the life after this life,
Mhm.
does it seem we here in this earthly realm, of course, it seems like 30 years, if we live to in our 80s or whatever, seems like so long to see them again. But how is their, once again, I know there's no time, but their perception of, I'm going to say time because I'm a human being, of when they'll see, is it like a blink of an eye, or have you gotten that information?
Sure, sure. Then they live their lives the same way that we live it here. So there is a time of sorts. So time has passed. They have activities that they're engaged in. It doesn't speed up. It's just exactly like life. But there just are no days and years and those sorts of things. They don't celebrate birthdays unless a person on this side of life is celebrating a birthday. Then they will come to us at that time. They learn about time and the passage of time from us by coming to us and by getting our thoughts. And so that's the way they get their sense of time and their sense of celebrations. So then they do have what amounts to a sense of time, of things passing, of going from day to day, but there's no sun. So they're not revolving around the sun and having years, or they're not spinning an earth. So they have days. And what they're doing is they're simply living their life there. They lose track of time. If they want to have a meeting, then everybody is one mind when you want to be. So everybody will get the indication from somebody that they want to have a meeting, and they'll hold the meeting then. There's no need to have a clock. There are no clocks. What they do is they just know that they want to meet then, and then they all come together and they meet then. And we do know about other people's thoughts. The communication is by telepathy,
Yes.
unless people want to speak. If they want to speak, they may speak. But the communication is by telepathy, mind to mind. But we are also able to shut off our mind. So we can say that some of these things I want to have private. And so I'm not going to have those things shared. And we're able to do that in the next plane of life. And the other people honor that there.
What about reincarnation? Have you learned? Because if we go back after the life, after this life, or the next life, or the real life, and we're going to be in the same body but much, much younger, what about what have you been told about all those past lives and those bodies and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the messages are very clear. The reincarnation is misunderstood
Oh,
by most people on the earth plane. what they tell us, and repeatedly in all sorts of ways, is that what happens is that we are part of a higher self. So we have a higher self, and we are members of the higher self. And the higher self has many individuals who are part of it. And so then the higher self, then when the people are going to come into the earth plane to learn lessons, then another person from the higher self is incarnated, comes to the earth plane. What they do is, though, there is a planning session, a series of planning sessions before the person comes into earth school, into the earth realm. And during those planning sessions, then the people, the souls who are involved, want to learn something, or want to find out something, or they want to change something which might have happened in another life. And so what they'll do is they'll take fragments, they'll take a framework, or they'll take parts from another life that was lived. And then they will become part of the new person when they come into this life.
Mm.
But the person who comes into this life is an entirely new person. We will always stay the individuals we are throughout eternity, even though we become higher order beings. We stay the individuals whom we are. But then the other individuals then come out of the higher self. They're based upon, they take their framework from the individual who was here before. That's where the past lives come from. So because they've taken a framework from another life, then they are attuned to that life, and that's where the past life regressions come from, so
Right.
that they experience that past life with that other person. But we as individuals stay individuals. We take pieces or fragments from other lives that are part of our life, and we get that relationship with the other lives through that. But we always will stay as individuals forever.
Ah, I love that.
Mhm.
And you talk a little bit about perceptions and understanding and also senses, how that's different. Um, can you elaborate on that?
The senses that we have exist all by themselves. So then, if you think of seeing something, you see a rose. When you see a rose, then you have the senses of the seeing the rose, the smell of the rose, the touch of the rose, and all of those things are part of the rose phenomenon, the rose experience. But each one of those is just a sense. The sight is just a sense. And as a result of that, because we know that the sight is just a sense, we don't need to have a physical rose outside of us. Our universal consciousness gives us the sense of the rose. So it's rather like being in a dream. When you're in a dream and you see a rose in your dream, there's no rose there, but you have this experience of a rose there. You have friends that are in your dream, they're not there either. There is no person there in your dream, but you have the sense that the person is there. You have conversations, you have sounds that are in your dream. All of these things are coming into your mind, but there's no objective reality. There's nothing outside of our universal consciousness that's giving that to us. That it's not like there was a big bang and you got all of these stars that are flung out, and you have the earth formed in 4.5 billion years ago, and then we evolved into who we are today. None of that is true. So everything that has happened then is in our universal consciousness, and it is given to us, without having to have a world out there that's spinning through space. There is no such world. But we have the senses. We have the sense of sound, the sense of smell, the sense of touch. All of these sounds, all of these senses that we get are coming from our universal consciousness, and we then receive them as the Earth School minds that we are, and we go through our Earth School lives with these senses and these experiences. And all of humankind is creating these. So we're creating them because of the fact that we expect them to be there.
Mhm.
We expect to have mountains. We expect to have streams. And if everybody in the world, all 8 billion people, for some reason suddenly believed that there were two moons, then there would be two moons. Now, that's not going to happen. And the reason is we have to have continuity in what we experience. So, what we were raised with, what we grew up with, then continues, but it continues because we expect it to be there. And we can change our lives and we can change the world based upon what our expectations are. So, if we live in a world that is harsh and cruel, that's full of suffering, It's because we're perpetuating that. We're continuing that world. We can change the world to be full of love, peace, and joy. All we need to do is decide that we're going to be doing it, and then we need to live that world, and that world will come into being.
Yes. It is interesting how when one awakens to this knowledge that they become some sort of a they become kind of a light in the world, light workers, we like to call ourselves, everyone.
Yeah.
And it really is true. People are kind of gravitate towards that because it's just all about love,
Yeah,
all
it's
about
all about
love.
love, and we sense that. People can actually send feelings to other people. Uh,
Right.
Research to show that that's true. They've done the research in which they've had a person who is a sender in one room, a person who is a receiver in another room. The sender then is told to send agitated thoughts to the receivers and thoughts of anger and agitation and confusion. And when the receiver gets that, then they're hooked up with electrodes like a lie detector. And what happens is every time that sender sends those thoughts, the receiver responds in the body that's seen through the lie detector. And what that means is that all of our thoughts that are agitating and confusing and angry thoughts toward other people are received by those other people. And because that's true, because it does respond, they do respond at a very subliminal level. They don't realize it. It doesn't come up to consciousness, but it is there. And because of that, then we do have a sense that some people are loving and they are people whom we want to be around. And we get that sense because of the fact that they are really that kind of a person that is really coming from them. And at the same time, there are people we just have a bad vibe around,
Right.
don't feel good about being around this person. That is coming from them to you. And it's coming at that subliminal level where you don't realize that it's affecting you. But we know it affects the body because in a lie detector test, their bodies become agitated without them ever realizing what's going on.
And I think that's really important when we're talking about children to listen when they get a bad vibe about someone, and don't make them hug, whomever if they just are feeling weird because it comes from somewhere that's true in
Yeah,
their hearts. Yeah.
yeah.
So we don't have too much more time, but I would like for you just to talk a bit about imagination and
Mm.
what it is and the importance of it and why it's important for us to help our children use their imagination more.
Children are in a state of mind which is called an alpha state, an alpha brainwave state, but they're in a state of mind in which a person goes into that state of mind when they're doing readings. For instance, a medium does readings. In that state of mind, then they are in imagination. They're in a state of mind in which things are real to them. They're experiencing them. That's why they can have a tea party and mud pies and these kinds of things. It's not that they're just playing. They really believe that they're real at that level. They are in that state in which they're becoming programmed from age 1 to 7. And as they're in that alpha state, they're very receptive to what it is that we're doing, to what we tell them, to what we model for them. And so then when they're in that state, then we have to be careful about what it is that we're modeling, what it is that we tell them, because of the fact that they will take that and then that will be the basis for their adult life.
Mm.
But we can by treating them with respect, by showing them love, by showing them that we regard them highly, that if something happens, that in their little world, that they because they're just they're despondent because a toy has broken. That's their world. For them, we need to take that as seriously as we would take that as a person who had just had their car damaged. So an
Right.
adult with a car damaged, when the child has their toy damaged, it's the same level. And we need to understand that, to respect that, to accept what it is that they feel, and to commensurate or to sympathize with them as a result of that. So we need to realize the fact that they are in an alpha state. Their reality is much, much stronger in these kinds of little things in their imagination, and that imagination then is very important to them. They may have an imagination about their imaginary friends. Many of their imaginary friends are not imaginary. They are, in fact, people who are coming to them who come from another realm, and they are going to be people who are interested in them. It could be grandpa, it could be someone else. So very often, not always, but very often, that imaginary friend is not so imaginary. But we need to encourage the children to imagine, to enjoy their imagination, to realize they're in a different world than we're in, that what they regard as important will be different from what we regard as important, but it's nonetheless important for us to realize that that's true and to honor that.
So, how has this knowledge changed? I mean, you've been on a lot of different paths in your life, as you started talking about in the very beginning. How has this knowledge that you now know to be true, how has it changed your life?
It's changed it dramatically. So I'm much more tolerant than I ever was before. I treat people differently than I did before. I see them differently. I actually have a different sense about people. I look for opportunities to be of service to other people and to minister to them. And all these things are spontaneous. It's not that I feel like I have to do something or that it's in the book and I need to follow the rules. All of these things are spontaneously coming out of me. And what happens is when you begin to realize that we are one in our universal consciousness, that we will never die, that we will continue to live, and that our goal here in life is to learn lessons, to love and grow in compassion for other people, and to enjoy the experiences in this life, then we change in the way we view ourselves, the changes in the way we view other people, and it changes the way that we live our lives. So that's what's happened for me.
Ah, very well said. Well, Craig, thank you so much. And I really encourage my listeners to reach out with any questions and to dig into your books because there is so much science. And as you say, science is the leader in all of this now. And so if people want to find you, how would they do that?
You can go to afterlifeinstitute.org. That's our institute. Or they can send me an email if you want to send it to R period Craig period Hogan at afterlifeinstitute.org.
Okay.
I certainly would answer any questions.
Okay, great. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share that I didn't ask today?
No, the important message is the fact that we are eternal beings, that we are in Earth school for a limited period of time, that we must not take it so seriously, that we have challenges, and that we have all the kinds of help from people living in the next plane of life. We just have to listen to it. And so become aware of that, listen to the people there, and go on confidently in this life, knowing that this life is being all that you can become, and that you can make of yourself what you want to be and what you want your life to be. And you just have to realize that and do it.
Beautiful. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much. It was such an honor, and have a great rest of your day. And hopefully, I'll meet you at one of these conferences one day soon.
Yeah, hopefully. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Bye bye.
Bye.
That was great. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was good. Good interview. And so I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did too. Thank you. And I will let you know when it's going to air so you can share it with all of your gang. I know you have a lot of people reading and sharing and all of that. So
Yeah.
so anyway, have a great day and hopefully the leaves, well, it sounds like you're really enjoying the sunshine. So I hope we get some of that too in Indiana.
Oh, yeah, we'll send some over.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, take good care.
Okay. Bye bye.